As a child, my favorite part of Halloween was the pumpkin carving. At first, my brother and I would watch our dad do it, since we were too young to play with knives. But as we got a little older, we were allowed to make our own. I was much better at it than my brother, but he didn't seem to mind. He wasn't into the artistry of it as much as I was. I loved it so much that our dad would take me back to the pumpkin fields every few days so I could continue creating my masterpieces. Everyone loved my pumpkins. The neighbors would always say how talented I was to craft such expressive faces. My dad started calling me his little carver. I even started carving pumpkins for people in the neighborhood. Pretty soon, everyone had one of my famous pumpkins on their doorstep. I remember my dad bragging to one of the neighbors that I could probably carve a pumpkin in my sleep. The Halloween after I turned 12, I got the most candy of any previous year. People gave me extra as a way of saying thank you for the pumpkins. There was so much that I gave some to my brother, which I normally wouldn't do. He gave me a big hug and said he loved me, so I smacked him and called him an idiot. We ate so much candy that we went to bed with stomach aches. That night, I had a dream that I went to the pumpkin fields alone. It was dark, and all I could see in every direction were pumpkins of all shapes and sizes. I strolled the rows, searching for the perfect one. A voice from behind me said, "Pick me." So I turned around to see a huge, magnificent pumpkin. It was almost as big as I was, and looked right for the carving. A knife appeared in my hand and I went to work, stabbing and slicing as inspiration took over. When I was finished, it was the greatest creation of my young life. Brimming with pride, I took a step back and admired my achievement with a satisfied smile. The next morning, they rushed my brother to the hospital, but it was too late. When I slept, I dreamt of an eldritch landscape of immense magnitude. The ground was a brownish color, but whatever it was formed from was not of terrestrial origin. I looked up and viewed the sky. It was of a yellowish tint, without a cloud or sun in sight. My surrounding was filled with onyx monoliths, tall as skyscrapers, which almost breached the heavens. Carved into each standing stone was an assortment of hieroglyphics that depicted grotesque beings of an unknown origin. While examining one of the monoliths, I could not help but feel hypnotized by its odd carvings, awe-stricken by its huge size. Unaware, I was slowly moving towards the obelisk. As I was getting closer, I noticed by my feet there was a small stone with sharp, jagged edges lying on the unearthly soil. I leaned over and grabbed the object. Once in the palm of my hand, I realized the stone had a similar inscription to the monolith that was before me. The inscription was a collection of peculiar letters, followed by a symbol of what seemed to be a star with an odd shape. In the center of the star was what I assumed to be an eye. Unable to neither understand the symbol nor translate the lettering on the stone, I put it in my pocket for some unknown reason. The moment I put the relic in my pocket, I began to hear horrifying screams. The screams were not of man, but of something that dwells in a madman's worst nightmare. I put my hands on my ears and fell to my knees in agony. Suddenly, the screeching subsided and was supplanted by distant footsteps. I closed my eyes and completely fell back onto the eerie dirt in relief. After that, I awoke from my bizarre pillar-infested slumber in a jolt. I was sweating profusely and continued to hear the footsteps until they came to an abrupt stop. Then I heard the shambling of keys coming from the other side of the door to my room. Shortly after, the door opened and a man wearing white entered. In one of his hands, he was holding a small plastic cup. The man then began to approach me and opened his other hand, revealing 2 tiny pills resting in his palm. He started to speak in a morose voice, saying, "All right, William, it is time for your afternoon medication," and took both the pills and the water from his hands, then consumed them. Once I swallowed the medication, the man snatched the cup from my hand and exited the room, closing and locking the door behind him. A short while later, I began to feel disoriented, so I started to lie down. As I was getting into an adequate position, something sharp in my pocket scratched against my leg.